He had silver hair, kind eyes, and hands that trembled just like mine. Maybe that's why I trusted him. I thought, naively, that at 65, no one plays games with love anymore. I believed that people our age just wanted warmth, honesty, someone to share silence with. I never imagined that the man who said he wanted to grow old with me was only growing closer to my savings account. He kissed my forehead that morning, said he'd be back with fresh bread and the newspaper. I even smiled, silly me, still barefoot in the kitchen, boiling eggs for two. He never came back. Later that afternoon, I opened the little box where I kept my retirement stash, just in case money, tucked away over years of living modestly. Empty. He had taken everything, my trust, my money, my softness. I sat there for hours, not crying, not angry, just numb. How could someone my age do this? I'd always thought it was the younger ones you had to watch out for, the smooth talkers with fast cars and perfect teeth. I believed older men were safe, gentle, tired of hurting and being hurt. That belief cost me everything. My name is Isabel. I'm 65. And this is how I lost everything I thought I knew, only to find something I never thought I deserved. For 2 days, I didn't leave the house. I kept expecting him to walk back through that door, carrying that stupid paper bag with the bread, pretending it was all a mistake. I checked my phone every 5 minutes. I even called the hospital once, thinking maybe he collapsed, maybe something happened. But something had happened. To me. When I finally stepped outside, it felt like every neighbor somehow knew, like they could see the word fool written across my forehead. I passed the bakery on the corner, the same one where we used to sit with coffee and laugh about nothing. The woman at the counter asked, "Where's your husband today?" I smiled. I said he was out of town. Then I walked straight into the nearest alley and threw up. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my bills spread out like knives. My savings were gone, my rent was due. My face in the mirror looked older than I remembered. And worst of all, I couldn't stop blaming myself. How could I be so stupid? I had built my whole life on the idea that trust was earned over time, that people our age didn't play games anymore, that gray hair meant wisdom, not warning. I didn't tell my daughter. I didn't tell anyone. I was too ashamed. For weeks I just floated. I woke up, ate toast, fed the cat, stared at the TV without hearing a word. I wasn't living. I was pausing, until one morning I woke up to sunlight pouring through the window, and it hit me. If I stay here, I'm going to rot in this house, so I did something that didn't make sense, not to anyone else. I sold my car. I packed a single suitcase. I left a note for my daughter saying I was going on a trip to clear my head. I turned off my phone, and I got on a bus with no plan, except one: I need to find the parts of me he didn't steal. My first stop was a sleepy coastal town in Portugal. I'd been there once, years ago, with my late husband. Back then, I had walked those cobbled streets holding someone's hand. This time, I walked alone. And for the first few days, it hurt. Everything reminded me of what I'd lost. Not just money, but time, youth, belief. But then, something began to shift. One morning, I sat outside a cafe with a warm pastry and a cup of strong, bitter coffee. The sea air hit my face, and I noticed how the light shimmered on the glass. The waiter smiled at me without pity, and I smiled back. I realized then that the world didn't owe me healing, but it was still offering me moments, small, quiet invitations to be alive. From Portugal, I went to Morocco, then southern Spain. I rented tiny rooms and shared tables with strangers who didn't ask questions. I wrote in a notebook like a teenager. I laughed out loud when a bird stole my sandwich. I cried quietly in museums, in buses, in hotel showers. The pain didn't leave me, but I stopped trying to outrun it. I let it sit beside me, and oddly, it started shrinking. In Brazil, on the coast of Bahia, I found a little pousada, a guest house, run by a woman named Clara who wore bright dresses and smelled like vanilla and lemons. She offered me a hammock on the balcony and a warm bowl of moqueca. "You have sadness in your bones," she said gently. "But it's not your whole story." I stayed there for weeks. The ocean outside hummed me to sleep. I walked barefoot. I watched children chase crabs and old men mend nets, and I realized I wasn't broken. I was just unfinished. One afternoon I was reading on the porch when I heard a voice, soft, low, and younger than I expected. "That's a beautiful book," he said. I looked up, and that's how I met Raphael. One afternoon, I was reading on the porch when I heard a voice, soft, low, and younger than I expected. "That's a beautiful book," he said. I looked up. He was tall, with dark hair tied back loosely, sun-kissed skin, and a gaze that didn't wander. It rested. Maybe mid-40s. He wore linen pants, a t-shirt, and a pair of scuffed sandals. There was something easy about him, like he belonged to the sea. "Do you know it?" I asked. "I teach it," he said. "Literature, back in Sao Paulo. I'm just here, resetting a few things." I nodded. I knew all about resetting. Over the next few days we ran into each other. On the beach, near the hammocks, by the breakfast table, we started talking, not flirting, just talking about books, grief, music, silence. He never asked about my past. He never made me feel like I had to shrink to be seen. One night, a storm rolled in. The wind howled and the power went out. I was alone on the balcony, wrapped in a shawl, watching lightning crawl across the sea. Raphael knocked gently on the door. "I brought candles," he said. We sat together for hours, not even that close, just present. The kind of quiet where nothing needs to be said, but everything is understood. At one point he looked at me and said, "You carry beauty like someone who forgot it's there." I looked away. I didn't know how to hold that kind of kindness anymore, but it stayed with me. I started to notice how he watched the world, not like someone looking for escape, but like someone grateful to be here. He wasn't afraid of stillness, or age, or the lines around my mouth. And slowly, something I never expected began to unfold. Comfort, then connection, then something dangerously close to love. I resisted. Of course I did. I told myself he was just being kind. I told myself I was ridiculous. He's 20 years younger, Isabel. Don't be foolish twice. But Raphael never once made me feel like a charity. He made me feel like a choice, and for the first time in years, I began to consider that I could choose myself too. I wish I could tell you I surrendered easily, that I let love in without hesitation. But I didn't. I spent weeks convincing myself it wasn't real, that Raphael was just a kind soul passing through, that once the wind shifted, he'd move on and forget all about the woman with aging hands and a guarded smile. I'd catch myself watching my reflection in the mirror, wondering if he noticed the way my skin folded when I laughed. I avoided cameras. I dressed modestly. I kept a safe distance between us emotionally, physically, spiritually. One evening we were walking along the beach at low tide. The sky was soft pink, the waves barely touching our ankles. Raphael picked up a smooth black stone and handed it to me. "You do this thing," he said gently, "where you make yourself small when there's nothing about you that asks to be hidden." I didn't respond. I just held the stone tight in my palm. That night, I lay awake in bed and thought, why am I so afraid to be loved again? And the answer came quietly. Because the last time I gave myself fully, I was left with nothing. But the fear of losing again was keeping me from living. It wasn't protection, it was prison. A few days later, I invited Raphael to walk with me into town. Nothing grand, just a stroll, shoulder to shoulder, among people who would surely stare and judge and speculate. And they did. I saw the glances, I heard a whisper or two, but then I felt his hand slide into mine, firm, unapologetic, warm. And in that moment, I didn't care. Because there, in that small act of courage, I realized something. I'd rather be judged for living fully than pitied for living safe. Months passed. I stayed. Not because I had nothing to return to, but because, for the first time in decades, I felt like myself. Not a mother, not a widow, not a victim, just Isabel. I started dancing again, barefoot in the kitchen, with music too loud and hips too slow. I let my hair grow out white. I stopped asking for permission to take up space. Raphael never tried to mold me into anything I wasn't. He didn't promise forever. He just showed up, every day, with presence, humor, and a gentleness I thought didn't exist anymore. One morning, we sat watching the sun rise over the sea, our hands resting between us, fingers just barely touching. He looked at me and said, "You know, people don't talk about how beautiful it is to love someone who knows who they are." I turned my head. And who am I? A woman who built herself twice. I didn't respond. I just let the words soak through my skin. Eventually, I wrote to my daughter. I told her everything, the man who stole from me, the shame I carried, the path I walked to find myself again, and the man who helped me feel seen without asking for anything in return. She replied with 5 words that made me cry in the middle of a crowded cafe. "I'm proud of you, Mom. I don't know what tomorrow holds. I'm not chasing fairy tales, but I wake up with soft peace in my chest. I kiss someone who chooses me without obligation. And every time I walk past a mirror now, I stop, not to check for wrinkles, but to smile at the woman who finally came home. If someone had told me at 65 that I would lose everything I trusted and still fall in love with someone 20 years younger, I would have laughed. But life doesn't care about our timelines. It cares about truth. And sometimes the person who breaks you isn't who you feared, and the one who saves you is the last person you expected. I don't tell this story because I want to be admired. I tell it because somewhere, someone older is sitting in silence, thinking love has passed them by. It hasn't. It may just be waiting for you, where your fear ends and your courage begins. Have you ever learned to love again after being hurt? I'd be honored to read your story in the comments below.